Welcome back all my aspiring pattern makers and my future fashion designers. If you're deciding to make a pair of pants or a pair of shorts or a skirt, you have to decide how you're going to finish the waist area of that garment. You have to decide what type of garment it is going to be. Is it going to be a fitted garment or is it going to be a loose fitting garment? If it is going to be a loose fitted garment, then you might want to incorporate an elastic waistband. Whereas also, if you don't want an elastic waistband and you choose to have gathers, then you might want to have just the regular rectangular waistband. But if it is a fitted garment where you have darts and or tucks, then you might want to have a standard regular waistband. But guess what? You don't have to stick to the standard rectangular waistband. There are options. And I'm going to show you two other options today that you can choose from. But before I do so, I'm going to show you how to make the standard regular fitted waistband. The standard regular waistband looks like this, where you have the two darts there, and on this particular garment you have the closure on the side seam, and this is on the left side. For a woman's garment, the closure is usually on the left side or at the center back, but if it's not the center back, which is standard, then you have to place that closure on the left side. Now in this garment, you notice that the closure is at the center back and you have the darts here on this garment also, and this is a regular rectangular waistband. I'm going to first show you how to make the pattern for the standard rectangular waistband, and then I'm going to get into what the other two options are and how to make the patterns for those two options. So let's get right into it. So for the regular rectangular waistband, you need your waist measurement. So you have your waist measurement, and say whatever it is, you're going to add 1 inch seam allowance for both ends, and then also you need extra inch to inch and a half, I'll say inch and a half, for the overlap piece. You need to form a rectangle. You need to start out with a line like this. So let's say the waist is 25 inches, so you're gonna have 25 inches plus the 2.5 inch here, or it could be 2 inches, so you need a total of 27.5 inches. The standard finish for a regular waistband such as this is usually 1.25 inches. So if you have 1.25 inches as your width, you need times it by 2, so you need another 1.25 inches there. That is going to be 2.5 inches, and then you need a total of 1/2 inch plus 1/2 inch seam allowance, so a total of 1 inch. So you need it to be 3.5 inches wide. So you're going to have your 3.5 inches wide here. 1, 2, 3.5 here. You can do that. 1, 2, 3.5 here. 1, 2, 3.5 here. So you need to draw a line now like this, and this line must be rectangular, and you're going to mark off whatever your waist measurement is. You can place this on the fold also, so even if you have the 27.5 inches, divide that by 2, you're going to get 13.75 inches. So this is putting this on fold, okay, and so you're going to mark off 13. This is 13 right here, and 3/4 inch right there, and you're going to mark it off. That is for if you're placing this part on fold, then you won't need the rest along there. And you have your seam allowance here of 1/2 inch here, and also 1/2 inch seam allowance here. And then you'll have your also 1/2 inch seam allowance here. So that's your option. This is what it would look like. And if you decide to have the knot unfold and you're just going to cut it like this, one piece, then you will notice that this one piece here, you don't have to put it unfold here. You can just have it one piece like this. Okay, so now I'm going to show you two other optional methods of clean finishing your garment if you don't want to use the standard rectangular waistband. If you don't want to use a traditional rectangular waistband on your garment, then you might have two other options. The first option that you'll have is using a self-facing. So when you're using a self-facing, you will notice that there's no waistband here, and on the inside you have the garment looking like this, where there is just a self-facing. And in order to do the self-facing, I'm going to now show you how to create the pattern for that self-facing. So first and foremost, you have your pattern here, your skirt pattern, or it could be the pants, whatever it is. And you have two ways of creating the self-facing. The first method is that you can place your pattern paper, an extra pattern paper, over your pattern like this. Notice I am making sure that I have my line here. You have to have the original line for your center front, and you can write CF right here. And you're going to trace all along, and also you're going to trace the dart. That is the left side of the dart. Once you trace the left side of the dart, you're going to slide it over to the other side, just like that at the top, and then you're going to continue and trace the other outline of the skirt. So now that you have this traced out, this would be your side seam here, and you will have your notch for your seam allowance on both sides, and you would simply go down 2.5 inches below this. You will go down 2.5 inches, and you go all the way around, and then you would just simply have that as your cutting line. Now the reason why I say to go down 2.5 inches is because when you have your 1/2 inch seam allowance here, then the finished band will be 2 inches wide. So this is what it will look like on the inside of the garment, and I use a serger to serge the edges, or you can use a bias binding and also go over the edges of the facing. The second method of creating your facing for your skirt or your shorts, or it could be your pants that you're making, is that you can first start by tracing out the center front of that garment along the center front down to maybe about 4 inches for now, and then you're going to trace along the waist seam allowance there. You have your dart here. You're going to put a hole there to pivot. I'm going to use my finger right now and just hold it, and you're going to pivot that pattern over. Continue tracing the edge of your pattern. Now once you have that, you are going to get your ruler, because now this is going to be your center front, this is going to be your side seam. This is not where the dart would be, because remember, this is for a fitted garment. And you'd measure down 2.5 inches again. Make sure this is perpendicular to the center front. You don't want to create a dip there. 2.5 inches down. All around 2.5 inches. And this would be your front facing. Now one thing I must say to you is that when you are doing this, there is an optional part that you might want. If you want the waist not to hit you right at the waist and a little bit above, you can go ahead and add an extra 1/2 inch around the waist area there and a little 1/2 inch around here to bring it up a little bit. If you want to have a high waist, you can do the same thing. You can go further up, maybe 1 inch up or 1.5 inches up to how high you want that waist to be, so you can go up more on the pattern piece, and also when you're doing it on the facing, so you can opt to do that also. So you don't have to necessarily have it just sitting at the waist. You can have a high waist, and it depends on how high you want that waist to be. Then you can determine the amount of height you want to go up from the original waist pattern and also on the facing. So this is just for the self facing. The second option of having that clean finish for your skirt or your pants or your shorts, if you don't want to use the regular rectangular waistband, is to use a bias binding. Now you can create your own bias binding. Now that bias binding would look like this. Now this garment is lined, and you notice here that it's a bias binding. Notice how tiny it is. This is what I did. I have it where the edge of it is folded under. So you have two ways of creating this also. This bias binding can be self-made, or you can buy one that's pre-made. But if you are making a garment and you want to have that tailored look, use a self-made bias binding. Now, how do I go about making a pattern for the self-made bias binding? First of all, you need to have your paper. If you don't have a dotted paper, that is fine. But if you have the dotted paper, then that is perfect. So what you need to do, if you have the dotted paper, you're going to draw a line. I'm using my 2x2 ruler here, and because I'm using my 2x2 ruler, then I know that my line is going to be 2 inches apart. Or you simply do that on the line on your dotted paper. You can follow your lines, but I would suggest that you just have your paper like that. Once you do that, then you're going to form a square, and once you form the square, you have the square. Now it's going to be 2x2. Must be a square, not a rectangle. So you have that square 2x2x2x2. When you have that square, you can go ahead now and create that line for your bias binding, because you're going to go from the tip of the square to the other tip of the square, and that's how you're going to create your bias binding. All right, so let's do this. Tip of the square to the tip of the square. And because my bias binding, I need it to be, say, dealing with a waistband that has a seam allowance of a 1/2 inch. So if you have the 1/2 inch there, plus another 1/2 inch, plus the 1/2 inch on the inside, so the outer part. So this is the seam allowance, the first one, then the 1/2 inch on the outer part, then the back that is showing, and also the turn up, which be 1/2 inch. So you need a total there of 2 inches. So you can actually also use this, the 2x2 ruler, and do that on either side, and you extend it. Now that's the width. So you're going to have 2 inch width here, but bias binding, but finished edge or finished width, finished is going to be 1/2 inch. Even though you have this bias binding or the bias strip here, you need to create that grain line, and the grain line, you can use this mark as a guide for your grain line and just create another one, or you can create it from there. It doesn't matter. All right, so you can do that, and this would be your grain line on your bias binding. So in order to get the length of the bias binding that you need to know your waist measurement. So whatever your waist is, plus 1/2 inch, turn under, plus another, you can use 1/4 or 3/8, but I'll say for safety reasons you can use 1/2 inch, you can use 3/8, it doesn't matter. Plus the overlap, I'll say a 1 inch overlap. Try not to go too much, that is fine, because it's just a bias binding. You're not using the regular skirt hook and eye as a closure for a bias binding that is 1/2 inch wide. You have to simply use just a regular hook and eye, and they come in different sizes. You can use the 1/4 inch one, or you can use the next size up, which is about a 3/8 of an inch. Your waist measurement plus, that's a total of say 2 inches here, but you can do a total of 1.75 inches. You don't have to do the total 2 inches there. Right, so you can choose to use that one. So those are the two options that you have when you don't want to use the standard rectangular waistband. You can either use a self-facing or you can use a self-made bias binding to clean finish that waist area of your garment. I hope that you have learned something from this video and that you will not stick to the regular rectangular waistband and you can use a regular facing or a bias binding. Go ahead, try it on your own and see what your garment is going to look like. Stay away from regular and be different. That's who I am. I like to be different. And guess what? Even if you are making a garment that is lined, you can still use the self-facing here, and then you have your lining attached to the facing of the inside of the garment, so you can do that also. If you notice on my pants here, this is lined. You can opt to have that also. Thank you for watching. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and don't keep this video to yourself. Share it with your friends and family members all around the world so they too can know how to choose a different type of finish for the waist of their garment and don't just stick to the regular standard waistband. Don't forget to like and leave a comment. And see you soon. Cheers now. Bye.